Hello, third grade, and welcome to Unit 5, Week 4. We're going to start with our vocabulary words. The first word is unfairness. Unfairness is the state of something being not fair or not just. It would show unfairness if only the boys were allowed to have recess. Next, we have the word horrified. If you're horrified, you're shocked, you're upset about something that was done that was not right. Next, we have the word continue. Continue means to keep going. Our next word is the word proposed. So when you propose something, you are suggesting it. So you might propose that your class plays tag during recess instead of playing hide and seek. Next, we have the word daring. Another word for daring is brave. That's a synonym for it. Our next word is the word waver. If you waver, you're pausing for a little bit. You're not super sure about what you're doing. You're still kind of in the middle. So when you're wavering a little bit, you're pausing and you're thinking about it because you're not sure of yourself. Our next word is the word citizenship. When you have citizenship in a country, that means you have all the rights of anyone who was born there. And our last word is the word participate. When you participate in something, you are being a part of it. So you might participate in a game, which means that you're playing in the game, or you might participate in a discussion where you're one of the people who are talking. Our spelling words for this week are when we're adding inflectional endings and we have to change the Y into an I. So we've talked about this before, but now we're going to see it in our spelling words as well. So we have the word tries, tried, and trying, dries, dried, and drying, hurries, hurried, and hurrying, studies, studied, studying, plays, played, playing, chapter, bedtime, letter, obeyed, and worrying. Now remember the pattern that we're seeing here. When your word ends with a consonant and then a Y, you change it to an I before you add the ES, you change it into an I before you add the ED, and you do not change anything, you only add the ING. So remember, if it ends with a consonant letter and then a Y, IES, IED, or YING. Same thing with dries, IES, IED, YING. And you'll see that pattern throughout. Now, when we have a word that ends with a vowel and then a letter Y, all we do is we add the S, we add the ED, we add the ING. We don't change anything on it. Now, we're also going to review some prefixes and suffixes. And these are things that we've talked about again in the past. So a prefix or a suffix, both of those come from the word affix. So when you affix something, you're sticking it or you're attaching it to something. So what do? When we attach these to a word, it changes the meaning of the word that they're attached to. Now, a prefix gets stuck onto the beginning of a word, so it comes before the actual word. And a suffix gets stuck onto the end of a word, so it comes after the word. So we have the prefix un, which means not, like unhappy or unclean or unfair. And we have the prefix dis, which means the opposite of. So dislike, disappear, or disbelief. Our suffixes are ly. So ly, when you add ly to the end of a word, you're telling me how that thing was done. So if you did something carefully, if you were speaking quietly, if you were dancing happily. Also, we have the prefix full, which means full of something. So someone is very careful. You might go to a place that feels very peaceful. You might see some flowers that are very beautiful. And then we have the suffix less, which means the opposite. It's the opposite of full. It means without something, someone when you don't have something. So fearless, someone who doesn't have any fear. Penniless, doesn't have any money. Hopeless, has no hopes. Now, again, another important thing for you to notice here, same thing like your spelling words. If your base word ends with a consonant and Y, change it to a Y before you add the suffix less. So that's why penniless, even though we know the word penny is Penny, We changed that Y into an I before we added the suffix less to it. Oops, what's going on with my notes? Okay, next we're going to talk about possessive pronouns. So possessive pronouns show ownership. So let's review real quick. Now, nouns are any person, place, or thing. Cat, dog, house, building, lake, river, ocean, mountain. Those are all nouns. It can be anything. A pronoun takes the place of one or more noun. He, she, it, they, we, us, them, her, him, it, you, me. Subject pronouns are specifically found in the beginning of the sentence. It's who or what the sentence is about. So it's what you would generally start a sentence with. I, you, he, she, it, we, or they. I like ice cream. You like ice cream. He likes ice cream. She likes ice cream. It, my puppy, likes ice cream. We like ice cream. They like ice cream. Object pronouns come in the predicate towards the end of a sentence. So, will you come to the park with me? Can I go to the park with you? Did you give the book to him? Does this pencil belong to her? Do you know where I left it? Do you want to come with us? Or are we going with them? So you see those are towards the end of a word, or sorry, the end of a sentence. So me, you, him, her, it, us, them. Now, possessive pronouns take the place of a possessive noun, and they do not have an apostrophe and an S at the end to show possession. So usually I would say this is Sarah's pencil, S-A-R-A-H apostrophe S to show ownership. Instead, I'm going to say this is her pencil. So my possessive pronouns are his, her, my, your, its, our, and their. We're talking about something that belongs to these different pronouns. And it's usually found immediately before the noun that it's talking about. So this is his apple. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the apple that belongs to him, his apple. Where is her bag? So we have the pronoun her, the possessive pronoun her, and the noun that we're talking about right after it, the bag. Can you help me find my book, right? The book that belongs to me. Please help the cat find its toy. Please take out your pencil. This is our puppy. We are going to their house today. So you can see that our pronoun is written in bold, right? It's written a lot darker and thicker. And then our noun is underlined. So you see how our noun is right after the possessive pronoun. It's telling me what that possessive pronoun owns. His apple, her bag, my book, its toy, your pencil, our puppy, their house. Next, we're going to talk about reflexive pronouns. Now, reflexive pronouns are a kind of object pronoun. That means they come in the tail end of the sentence, right, in the predicate, and it renames the subject. So it's talking about the same subject. And it usually ends with self or selves. That's your biggest clue. If you see it end with self or selves, you know it's a reflexive pronoun. It's talking about, it's going back to the subject. So reflexive means reflecting back on the subject, right? Like a mirror. We use a reflexive pronoun when we want to refer back to the subject of the sentence, and all reflexive pronouns end in self if they are singular, S-E-L-F, or selves, S-E-L-V-E-S, if it's plural. So we have our table right here where I organize everything for you into what our subject pronouns are to remind you, our object pronouns, and our reflexive pronouns. So myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself. Those are all singular. Or I can be talking about the plurals. I can say ourselves, yourselves, if I'm talking about a group, themselves. Now, I want you to see in these example sentences how we're referring back to the subject. So pay attention to what's underlined. I saw myself in the mirror. Myself is talking about I, it's talking about me. So I saw myself in the mirror. Why do you blame yourself? So yourself is talking about you. John sent himself a copy. So himself is referring to him, John. Mary sent herself a copy. So herself, talking about Mary. My dog hurt itself. So itself is referring to my dog. We blame ourselves. So maybe we made a mess and we blamed ourselves. So ourselves refers to us or we. Can you help yourselves? So yourselves is talking about you. They cannot look after themselves. So themselves refers to them or they, the people that we're talking about in the subject. So reflexive means it's going back. And this also comes from the word reflex. So if you've ever gone to the doctor, right? And they'll tap you on the knee and you see your leg will kind of pop up and then it'll come back, right? It'll go back to the spot it was in before. That's a reflex. So it's returning back to its original spot, or it's going back to where it was before. So a reflexive pronoun is a word that's going back to the original word in the subject. It's going back to the subject of the sentence. So you can always use this table up here to help you figure out which one you need to work with. I split them up into singular on top and plural on the bottom. The singular ones are the lighter colored ones, the plural ones are the darker colored ones, and they're divided into subject, object, and reflexive pronouns to help keep everything organized for you guys. Please make sure you come back to the notes when you are doing your work, because this is a lot of information and I know that you're going to possibly forget some of it. So that's why the notes are here. Now we're also going to talk about inflectional endings that end with S or ES, ED, and ING. Now I know we went over most of these before, but I wanted to keep them all in one place for you. So the ones that we need to focus on are mainly these two bottom ones, but let's review the top ones first. So inflectional endings are word parts that are added to the end of a base word, and they show tense, or when, remember, tense is when something happens, past, present, future. So before we add an ED or an ING to some verbs that have short vowels, we double the final consonant. So what does that mean? If it ends with a vowel and then a consonant in it, like the word stir, S-T-I-R, has a short vowel sound, says I, it doesn't say I. We add an S to it, stirs, but for adding an ED or an ING, I'm going to double that consonant, S-T-I-R-R-E-D, S-T-I-R-R-I-N-G, stirring. And you can hear me say it. You can hear me stress that R sound. Same thing with the word chat. It ends with an A-T, so vowel, consonant, short vowel sound. Chat becomes chats. We only add an S. But for chatted and chatting, we're doubling that consonant, so T-T-E-D, and then T-T-I-N-G. Same with the word trip, short I sound, I. So I-P, vowel, consonant. Tripped has a double P in it. And tripping also has a double letter P in it as well. Now, if it ends with a silent E, same thing as before, we're only adding an S to the end of it. But when we add the ED or the ING, we're going to drop that silent E. So baked, instead of being B-A-K-E and then adding ED, it would become B-A-K and then we add the ED, or B-A-K and then we add the ING. We drop that silent E before we add those inflectional endings, ED or ING. Same thing with the word chase and the word race. So chase, C-H-A-S-E-D, C-H-A-S-I-N-G. Now for the two that we're going to focus on, these are words that end with a Y. So it either ends with a consonant Y or it ends with a vowel and Y. So words that end with a consonant and Y to pay attention to up here on top. For most verbs that end with a consonant and Y, change the Y to an I before you add the ES, the ED, or the ING. So over here, you're not just adding S, you're adding an ES. So hurry, H-U-R-R-Y. So here we're seeing consonant and then a letter Y becomes Hurries or Hurried or Hurrying. So you're only changing it when you're adding the ES or the ED, but when you add the ING, your Y stays in place. The same thing applies for when it ends with a vowel and the letter Y. Now, the difference between having a vowel Y or a consonant Y, for vowel Y, you're not changing any letters. You're not replacing any letters. Your Y stays the same. But when you have a consonant letter Y, you change it to an I before you add the ES or the ED. And you leave it alone when you're adding the ING. So the word play, P-L-A-Y, is a vowel in Y. So it becomes P-L-A-Y-S or P-L-A-Y-E-D or P-L-A-Y-I-N-G. So plays, played, or playing. Stay, stays, stayed, or staying. Enjoys, enjoyed, or enjoying. So these two bottom boxes are where the majority of your work for this week is going to come from. This is where I want you to focus. You may find a few of them that come from these top two that we had talked about in the past. That's why I wanted to make sure that you had all the information in the same place. But remember, consonant Y, change it to an I. Vowel Y, leave it alone. All right, next let's get into our weekly stories. We're going to start with our literature anthology book, and we're going to be reading about biography. So this falls in line with the assignment that we were doing before and that some of you guys are still working on now. And we're going to read about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and her work towards getting women the right to vote.
Genre: Biography. Elizabeth leads the way. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the Right to Vote. By Tanya Lee Stone. Illustrated by Rebecca Gibbon. Essential question: what do good citizens do? Read about how good citizen Elizabeth Cady Stanton fought for women's right to vote. What would you do if someone told you you can't be what you want to be because you are a girl? What would you do if someone told you your vote doesn't count, your voice doesn't matter, because you are a girl? Would you ask why? Would you talk back? Would you fight for your rights? Elizabeth did. All of these things used to be true back when Elizabeth Cady was a girl. And all of these things might still be true today if Elizabeth hadn't led the way. She was only 4 years old the first time she heard someone, a woman, say, "Life was better for boys." The woman had come to visit Elizabeth's new baby sister. What a pity it is she's a girl. How could anyone look at a little baby and feel sad? What could be wrong about being a girl? She was 13 years old when her father, Judge Cady, told a woman whose husband had died that the farm she had spent her whole life working on would be taken from her. Without a husband, the law stated, nothing belonged to her. Elizabeth was horrified by this unfairness. She said that the law should be cut out of every book. Judge Cady told her that wouldn't change anything. Preposterous. The law was still the law, and only men were allowed to change laws. Stop and check. Ask and answer questions. What did Elizabeth feel was unfair? Reread pages 435 and 436 to find out. She decided right then and there that she could do anything any boy could do. She jumped over high hurdles on horseback. She rafted across a raging river. She won a prize for being the best in Greek studies. Her father was proud, but he worried about his strong-spirited, rule-breaking daughter. Ah, you should have been a boy. He knew how much easier her life would be. But Elizabeth wasn't interested in easy. At 16, since colleges would not let girls in, Elizabeth begged her father to send her to a girls' school to continue her learning. So while most young ladies were getting married, washing dishes, doing laundry, and having babies, Elizabeth was studying religion, math, science, French, and writing. Several years later, Elizabeth Cady met Henry Stanton. He was an abolitionist, speaking out against slavery. He understood how unfair it was for people not to have rights or power. He did not laugh when Elizabeth talked about freedom. He did not laugh when Elizabeth said all people should be able to live life the way they chose. And he did not laugh when she told him she would add his name to her own, but she would not give up hers just to marry him. So Elizabeth Cady became Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and had babies, cooked meals, washed dishes, mended clothes, and did laundry. She loved her babies, but she did not love cooking, and dishes, and mending and laundry. One day her friend Lucretia Mott invited her to a lunch. Lucretia had always shared Elizabeth's ideas about all the things women could do, and would do, if only they had the right. The other women at lunch shared them too. Elizabeth got fired up. She proposed they hold a meeting. A meeting that would gather together lots and lots of women from all around to talk. But what would they talk about? There were so many things that needed to be set straight. Married women couldn't own property, or even the money they worked to earn. Elizabeth had learned long ago that only men could change the laws, because only men could vote. That was it. That was the one thing that could change everything. If women could vote, they could help change all kinds of laws. The idea was so shocking, so huge, so daring. Elizabeth's friends gasped out loud. If they were flabbergasted, what would other people think? Elizabeth did not waver. She knew voting was the only way to make a difference. Her battle cry for the right to vote rang out, "Have it we must, use it we will." Even her Henry thought she had gone too far. Stop and check. Ask and answer questions. How did people feel about Elizabeth's ideas? Reread pages 444 and 445 to find out. But on July 19, 1848, when Elizabeth arrived at the meeting place, she saw for herself that she hadn't. The small church in Seneca Falls, New York, was filled with hundreds of people. Elizabeth read aloud what she and a few of the women had written together. Their Declaration of Rights and Sentiments challenged the idea from the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. When she was finished, she looked into the faces of the crowd and waited. The room was silent. Then a rumbling began. It grew louder and louder and louder as people argued whether or not women should be allowed to vote. Stop and check. Summarize. How did Elizabeth try to win rights for women? Summarize the important events in order. Word of the meeting spread like wildfire. Newspapers across the country scolded Elizabeth for her boldness, but other women joined her in battle. The idea of women having the right to vote began to buzz in the ears of people from Maine to California. Elizabeth had tossed a stone in the water, and the ripples grew wider and wider and wider. Many said Elizabeth must be stopped, but she was unstoppable. She changed America forever. Genre: Biography. Compare texts. Read about how one person's good citizenship made a difference for women in the United States. Susan B. Anthony takes action. Susan Brownell Anthony was born in Massachusetts in 1820. Her family believed that all people are equal. At the time Susan was born, however, this idea of equality was very unusual. Men and women did not have the same rights. Women could not do many of the things men did. Women could not vote, and they could not own property. Life was different for Susan. She learned to read and write at the age of 3, even though she was a girl. Early struggles. When Susan went to school, she saw that boys and girls were not treated the same way. One of her teachers refused to teach Susan long division. She said that girls did not have any reason to know math. As a result, Susan's family took her out of school and taught her at home. Susan's family felt strongly about equality and good citizenship. They spoke out against slavery. When Susan was 26 years old, she became a school teacher and fought for the rights of students. She wanted boys and girls to be able to learn together. She also wanted children of former slaves to be able to learn in these same classrooms. A friend in the fight. When she was 28, Susan heard about a meeting to discuss how women might get the right to vote. She was very excited about this idea. She went with her family to Seneca Falls, New York, to hear Elizabeth Cady Stanton give a speech about the topic. Susan and her sister and parents signed papers to support the idea. Susan felt so strongly about it that she started working with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Together they started a weekly newspaper and gave speeches around the country. In 1978, the United States Mint released a dollar coin to honor Susan B. Anthony. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton spoke about women's right to vote at a meeting in Seneca Falls, New York. Women get the vote. Susan gave as many as 100 speeches around the country every year for 45 years. She always stayed excited and hopeful about her work. Not everyone agreed with her ideas. Susan and her friend Elizabeth Cady Stanton had to fight hard for many years for the rights of all people. They always did their work peacefully. It was not until 14 years after Susan died that women in the United States were allowed to vote. The long struggle would not have been successful without the work of Susan B. Anthony. Women can vote. This timeline shows important dates in the life of Susan B. Anthony and in the fight for women's right to vote. 1820. Susan Brownell Anthony, born in Adams, Massachusetts. 1848. Attended Seneca Falls Conference. 1852. Started working with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. 1868. Started a weekly paper. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton worked hard to support the rights of women in the United States. You can be a good citizen too. You can participate in your community just like Susan B. Anthony did. Volunteer your time. Get to know your neighbors. Talk to people. Listen to their ideas. Tell them your ideas. Work peacefully with others. Help others. Make your community a great place to live. Good citizens help people in their community. 1869. Make connections. In what ways was Susan B. Anthony a good citizen? Tell about some other leaders you have read about. How did they show good citizenship?
All right, that takes us to the end of our story in our literature anthology. We're going to go ahead and jump into our reading and writing workshop. And you're going to see a lot of familiar names during these readings. So we have people that some of you guys selected for your biography project. So this is going to be some fun and interesting information for a lot of you guys.
Genre, biography. Dolores Huerta, Growing Up Strong. Essential question. What do good citizens do? Read how Dolores Huerta's actions helped many people. Dolores Huerta learned to help people by watching her mother. Good citizenship was important to her, and she taught Dolores that women can be strong leaders. When Dolores grew up, she had the same beliefs. Good citizens. Dolores was born on April 10, 1930. She lived in a small town in New Mexico until she was 3 years old. Then she moved to California with her mother and 2 brothers. Dolores grew up watching her mother participate in community organizations. Her mother believed that all people deserved to be treated fairly. When Dolores was a young girl, her mother owned a hotel and a restaurant. Many farm workers who lived in their town were poor and hungry. They were paid very little for their hard work. Dolores' mother let them stay at her hotel and eat at her restaurant for free. This taught Dolores and her brothers that good citizens get involved in the community by helping their neighbors. Dolores Huerta helped farm workers who spent many hours working in fields. Dolores goes to school. Dolores saw how hard life was for farm workers in California. She wanted everyone to be treated fairly. This attitude continued as she attended college and studied to become a teacher. Many of the students that Dolores taught were the children of farm workers. These students were often tired and hungry. They came to school barefoot because they had no shoes. Dolores knew she needed to help them. As a result, she went to her school's principal and proposed some good ideas. She tried to get free lunches and milk for the children. She tried to get them new clothes and shoes. Trying to help the children was a daring thing for Dolores to do. The other teachers did not agree with her ideas. Dolores risked a lot, but her beliefs did not waver. She decided to do something about the unfairness she saw. She wanted to find a better way to help farm workers and their families. Dolores, strong and fair. This timeline shows important dates in Dolores Huerta's life. 1930, Dolores is born. 1933, moved to California. 1953 through 1955, worked as a teacher. 1955, met Cesar Chavez. 1962, Dolores and Cesar started National Farm Workers Association. 1975, helped pass laws to protect farm workers. Dolores stands strong. Every day, Dolores saw people working in unusually unsafe and disagreeable conditions. She was horrified. Many farm workers had little money to feed their families. Dolores decided to do something. In 1955, Dolores met Cesar Chavez. He wanted to make life better for farm workers, too. Dolores and Cesar organized the workers into a group called the National Farm Workers Association. This group protected the rights of the farm workers. It helped make big farms treat them better. As a result, working conditions on the farms improved. Growing up with a mother who cared about other people taught Dolores to be a good citizen. Her kind and brave acts helped farm workers and their families. Who is a good citizen? Dolores Huerta is. Dolores Huerta speaks out for farm workers at a rally in 1969. 1998, earned Human Rights Award from President Clinton. Make connections. How did Dolores Huerta's actions make her a good citizen? What can you do to improve people's lives?
All right, that takes us to the end of our stories. Let's go ahead and take a look at our comprehension strategy and skill. So we've talked about asking and answering questions in the past. This is when we want to find more information or to try and understand something better that maybe wasn't clear the first time. We'll ask questions about it and look for the answers. We're also going to talk some more about the author's point of view. And this is when we're looking at what the author thinks and feels about a specific topic.
Ask and answer questions. Ask yourself questions as you read. Then read on or reread to find the answers. Find text evidence. Reread Good Citizens on page 377. Think of a question and then read to find the answer. Good Citizens. Dolores was born on April 10, 1930. She lived in a small town in New Mexico until she was 3 years old. Then she moved to California with her mother and 2 brothers. Dolores grew up watching her mother participate in community organizations. Her mother believed that all people deserve to be treated fairly. I have a question. How did Dolores learn to be a good citizen? I read that when Dolores was young, her mother let the farm workers eat and live for free at her hotel. Now I can answer my question. Dolores learned to be a good citizen by watching her mother. Author's point of view. Point of view is what an author thinks about a topic. Look for details that show what the author thinks. Decide if you agree with the author's point of view. Find text evidence. What does the author think about Dolores Huerta? I can reread and look for details that tell me what the author thinks. This will help me figure out the author's point of view. Graphic organizer. Details. Dolores's mother taught her to be a good citizen and a strong leader. Helping her students was a daring thing for Dolores to do. Biography. Dolores Huerta, Growing Up Strong, is a biography. A biography tells the true story of a real person's life. Is written by another person. Includes text features such as timelines, photographs, and captions. Find text evidence. I can tell that Dolores Huerta, Growing Up Strong, is a biography. The author gives facts and information about Dolores Huerta's life. There is also a timeline that shows important events in Dolores's life in time order. Text features. Caption. A caption tells about a photograph. It gives information that is not included in the text. Timeline. A timeline shows the time order in which important dates and events happened. Prefixes and suffixes. A prefix is a word part added to the beginning of a word. A suffix is added at the end. To figure out the meaning of a word with a prefix and suffix, find the root word first. Find text evidence. On page 379, I see the word unusually. I find the root word usual first. I know the prefix un means not, and the suffix ly means in a way that. The word unusually must mean not in a usual way. Every day Dolores saw people working in unusually unsafe and disagreeable conditions.
All right, that takes us through to the end of our notes for this week. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.